Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our latest round of Scottish Gin, where we have been interviewing some of the Scottish gin makers and brands and people that are part of the Scottish gin industry. So we're delighted tonight to have, again, another local gin brand to us. They're based in Udney in Aberdeenshire, only about 15 or 20 miles away from where we are. So it's Nick and Emma Smalley, co-founders or founders, and the couple behind the Teasmith Spirit Company. I need to put my teeth back in tonight. So without further ado, are you there, Nick and Emma?
Yes.
Hi, we're here.
We are here.
Yeah, you're coming across very clear, so it looks like it's all going to go well. Hopefully no gremlins tonight. How are you?
Don't jinx it.
I know.
Yeah. Just as we hear Finley crying out from the background.
Yeah.
We're doing good. We're doing very good.
Thank you.
That's good. Yeah. So yeah, you're saying you've just put your wee boy to bed, so hopefully he'll.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So if I cut off at any point, apologies, but that'll be me just kind of be
Happens.
crying out for something.
Don't worry. How have things been for you guys during lockdown?
Well, it's been kind of it's bizarre. Like that's the only way to describe it. It's pretty bizarre. Like in a way, we are. So I divide my time 50% between still doing sort of my day job and 50% on the Teasmith. And the day job still had to continue. Still had to keep going to that all the time, and obviously. Drinking gin's been really popular in lockdown, so the Teasmith continued really strongly. So in a way, like whilst lockdowns happened, actually life has just had to go on. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But being out in Udney, we're fairly socially isolated anyway.
Yeah, that hasn't been too much of a problem. Has it?
And we actually don't have a lot of family up here, so we it's not like we couldn't miss going and seeing like family and that side of things. So.
Yeah.
In a way, like the world's changed dramatically around us, but we're just left here doing kind of the normal thing.
We've been enjoying spending time at home with Finley as well, our son, because I think he's been in childcare since he was about 10 months old, pretty much almost full time. And you never get an opportunity like this. We've spent a lot of time with him.
Yeah.
And of course, it's had its challenges. We don't want to sugarcoat anything, but actually, he's really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
He's really enjoyed that time with us, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So that's a bit challenging.
It kind of resets the priorities, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you do things a little bit differently, for sure.
Yeah. And I think running a gin company in the last couple of years has been like full on, like really full on, because we're part of a really fast moving industry. Like it's changing so quickly.
Yeah.
There's new players entering all the time. There's opportunities emerging all the time. And there's events going on all the time. And so the last 3 years have just been this mad, relentless kind of pace of trying to keep up with it all. So in a way, like there's a part of this lockdown that's been fantastic because it's just taking the foot off the throttle a little bit. And you don't have to worry about what anyone else is doing because, to be honest, everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah.
No one can go to any gin festivals and no one can do anything. So
level the playing field, hasn't it?
It has a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd be really keen to speak to other gin producers to see if they found the same thing because it has just been this chance to maybe just catch a breath a little bit in an industry where we've had no time to catch breath at all in the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it definitely, from the people we've spoken to, it's almost given them an opportunity to look at their strategy and reassess priorities and
long-term plans, maybe.
Yeah.
Sure. It's been a great time for reflection. I mean, as you say, both from a family point of view, but from a business point of view, we've been the same. So, and obviously, we're assuming that everyone watching maybe knows certainly your core product, but for those that don't, you tell us about your Teasmith Expressions?
Yeah. So 5 years ago is when we sort of first put pen to paper on the Teasmith. At the time, if you go back a few years, like the map of Scotland and gins has changed so dramatically over the past couple of years. But back in 2015, Aberdeenshire didn't really have any gin brands at all. And we just saw this emergence of like our favourite spirit really coming back into fashion. And we really just wanted to put something on the map for Aberdeenshire. So we just really wanted to come up with a really classic, premium quality gin. And it was we didn't really actually know we were going to use tea within the gin initially. But one of the pieces of advice that 42 Studio gave us very early on was that, your product it's got to have a story. It's got to be linked to the local area. It's got to have a tie.
Yeah.
And actually our favourite brands were ones where they'd done that, where they had a good story and they'd linked it to the local area. We discovered that Aberdeenshire had a lot of these links to the tea trade. And so we then started down a path of creating a gin that featured tea within its recipe. So the first product we came out with was the Teasmith Original, and that features a Ceylon tea that is really because it was someone from up here, from Auchenblay, who was the father of Ceylon tea. So we put a Ceylon tea into the first expression. So that's really like our signature original gin. And then last year we brought out one called Brewer Single Estate. And what's really unique about that was that it features a tea that's actually been grown here in Scotland. So there's a number of tea growers around Scotland. And we took that Scottish grown tea and created a recipe solely to sort of match the flavour profile that tea provided. And then we've also brought out some glassware, and just between us, there's a little candle burning in the background as well.
I did see that on the pre-video.
Added on some sort of bolt-on accessories, which go down really well, actually. Certainly, like in the gift market, and they're a really nice little add-on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and obviously we were going to ask you what inspired you to use tea as a botanical, and obviously you mentioned there's a tie to Aberdeen and the sort of tea industry. I guess when you first distilled with the tea, did it throw up any surprises?
I think, well, the distillery were kind of surprised when we pitched up with a bag of tea. They'd never seen anything like it before. And actually, there wasn't really anything in the... there are some resources out there that will give you an indication of what different botanicals will provide when you distill them. But tea was never there. Tea is not in any of the lists.
No.
So it really was a journey of discovery to take the tea and then distill it. And I think the thing that was so surprising was how complex it is as a botanical. So as you distill tea, or the tea in particular we use, throughout it, the temperature range, it really changes. So you get really citrusy notes at one stage, and then it goes quite floral, and then it moves on and it turns very like minty and sweet. So just complex. It's a complex botanical that we didn't really expect.
But also it's like a bit of a kind of, we always say like a bit of a happy coincidence that it was the kind of the flavours and the notes that we would quite naturally be drawn to in a gin and tonic ourselves, like quite a citrus, quite a light gin. Kind of those are the notes that it produced. Because
we took kind of quite a consumer angle when we were coming up with the product. Like, and it was interesting when we were coming up with the gin, because as we were coming out with ours, lots of other people were coming out with theirs. And as the market became busier, I think a lot of the gins went off in some pretty bizarre directions to grab a bit of real estate and grab a bit of headline. Actually, what we wanted to do was just create a really good classic tasting gin that you could just pick up and keep going back to. Not something that was really oddball, but something that was really classic and a really go-to gin that you could just keep going back to again and again and again. So the tea was great because, as Em said, like it provided those sort of all the key elements that you would need to create a gin that was not oddball, but actually really classic. And I hate to say the word mainstream, but one that the majority of people would actually really enjoy again and again and again.
It's almost a good starting point, is it? And I always think for a brand to produce that classic, London dry style, although yours is contemporary and method, technically, but it's kind of like that traditional signature gin. It's so important to get that just nailed, isn't it, before you go off in another direction.
Totally, and it's enabled us. That's why the original product is just so important, because that gives us this really strong base from which to start on, a really strong foundation, and now we can go off and form different expressions and some, maybe bring in some really different flavors. But we can always hang it off the original, and that's kind of always going to be like our centerpiece.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think it's really important to keep building upon that. Like, I see too many gin companies now that, in my opinion, I see some gin companies launching with 6 products plus.
Yeah.
And you're just like, how is the consumer supposed to get their head around what you're about if you've got so many expressions on the go? So I actually think it's really important that we do things slowly, but we do things right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we achieved with the Teasmith, because we've tied it to our local area. The guys at 42 Studio just did this amazing job on the packaging and design.
Yeah.
Just a huge shout out to Mark. I can't name them all now because the team's so big, but Mark, Sam, Gina, just so important that those guys, the work they did for us, just to create this really great looking product. And we need to build it slowly, but build it carefully and get people really into it, because there's too many gins, I think, right now that could end up just being a flash in the pan. Like, they're here today, but they're gone tomorrow. And that's not what we want.
Yeah.
We want a real classic.
And inevitably as well, so I feel like we're going off on tangents, but this is what happens. But inevitably, I always think it's interesting when people bring out different flavours or different expressions. It's almost like they're making way for their own product. It's almost like they're going to get pushed off the shelves for their latest flavour or their latest expression, which is always it must be a difficult decision, but it's kind of a risky one. Whereas if you have one really strong core product, chances are, that's going to stay on the shelf. Whereas it's very rare you go into a bottle shop and you see someone's entire range. You know what I mean? I think
totally.
I think the shops prefer to have multiple brands, but one from each brand. But
multiple products.
I do know how we're not in that position where we've got umpteen gins on the trot all at once. But I would bet a lot of my money that they're cannibalizing their own sales a lot of the time. You're not incrementally growing. What you're doing is you're replacing one for another. And it's just whether that's sustainable. And that's just not our model. Like, we went through a process in 2018. We were on a business growth scheme with Opportunity Northeast, which was really helpful for us. And a big part of that was actually taking a step back and sitting down and figuring out what your brand values are. Not brand values, but just what our values are as a business, what your business values are. And for us, it was about being really authentic, not gimmicky. We wanted, everything that we release it because me and Em enjoy it. We're not just doing it because it's a flavor trend. We're doing it because we've discovered this and we think you'll love it. And that's why I think we've taken this quite slow approach to only extending our product range in a tasteful way with stuff we like.
When it's right,
hoping that obviously people like it. And we're fortunate that they seem to be.
So far, so good. And you touched on it just briefly there, your second expression, which I believe you pronounced Brewer.
Yes.
Did I get it right? Good. And that obviously uses Scottish tea leaves, which is very interesting.
Might raise a few eyebrows, people thinking tea growing in Scotland.
Yeah, that's usually the reaction.
Well, it raised our eyebrows, to be honest.
How did that come about?
So what happened was when we launched, we used both gin and tea were new to us when we started. Do you know what I mean? So we had this huge learning curve. So we had to learn about making gin, but we also had to learn about the world of tea, which is really complex and quite diverse. So we actually used the services of a lady called Beverly Rainwhite to act as our tea consultant, to give us a bit of advice on what tea we should use. So she was the first point of contact for us to identify the tea from amber estate that goes into the original. at the time, so this is going back a couple of years, she was providing some consultancy also to some Scottish tea growers. And it's taken a couple of years for it to move forward. But there's like a group of people in Scotland who are starting to grow small plots of tea. And it's going to be something that takes an awfully long time. The growing conditions in Scotland are challenging, but it is possible. And we were 3 years in with our original product, and we knew we wanted to extend the product line. And it came just at a time where one of the growers, Ronnie from Brewer Tea Garden, had just the right amount of tea for us to do something with, but probably not enough tea to take it to market. So we were like, well, we'll happily take that off your hands, and then we'll go and experiment with it. And what was really interesting was that the Ceylon tea that we used and the Scottish grown tea that we used, whilst to look at, they were both the same, just two good quality, like great quality black hand rolled teas. When we distilled them, they were like completely different in flavour, And I can believe the flavour notes that came off the Scottish grown tea. So what we did was we worked with Lost Lock Spirits out at Boyne to create Brewer. And we distilled the Brewer tea, and you have to let it settle for a couple of days after you've distilled it to sort of see just to let the flavours kind of mellow out and see what you're getting. But as soon as I took the lid off the bottle, I actually called up Pete from Lost Lock, and I said, did you give us that distillate in a tainted bottle? Like, had you had something else in that bottle before it came to us? Because it was just like pure honey, like the notes of honey coming off the Scottish grown tea was insane, and you don't get any of that on the Ceylon. So I think what's really interesting is like the tea is obviously soaking up, the environment that it's grown in, the water, the soil, the environment, the way it's been processed, all influences the end flavour. And so what that does for us is create this really great opportunity for then tweak gin recipes to what the flavours that the tea provides. And that's exactly what we did with Brewer, is we used a core backbone of what goes into the original, but we tweaked the botanicals to really suit the notes that the tea provided, which was the honey. So we took D-side honey, local D-side honey, put it in the still. Nice. There's also apple notes as well, so we put fresh apples in the still, almost like a winter sort of fruit element to it. So we put some almonds and some cinnamon in the still with it, and I think the result's great because they've ended up being two very classic products, but completely different. Yeah. And whenever we're out and we're trying them out on people,
it's so interesting. It's like a little experiment.
People can't get their heads around it, how different they are. Yeah. But it was a big challenge for us because we released Brewer at a time where most gin producers were pumping out their main product and then just firing out a fruity liqueur-y type second expression. And we kind of really went against the crowd there to bring out a second classic product against our original. But I'm glad we did, actually, because, again, it sticks to the values that what we're about, which is, it's authentic, premium, classic gin. And I think it's another great one. It's another really good gin. And we've just submitted it into some awards, so we'll see what the professionals think.
We just made 1,000 bottles of it, so it's all sold out now. But hopefully we'll be able to make some more in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, this is episode 1 really of a line of Scottish grown tea gins. That's what we're hoping for there. And so. Another tea grower has expressed an interest to feature, but because of kind of everything that's going on with COVID, that's just been put on hold for now. But as soon as we can, I think what we'll do is there'll be a second edition, featuring another Scottish grown tea.
Very exciting.
As well as hopefully, if the growing season's good this year, then we'll get some more Brewer and we'll run another batch of Brewer. And what I'd love to see is like a little geographical map of Scotland with a little gin recipe suited to each of the teas. And I don't know, it'll depend what comes out of the sort of experiment, like whether the Scottish teas distill differently. But if they do, it'll be great because we'll have this little regionalised map of different gins with different teas. That's kind of where I'd like to see it go anyway.
Yeah. And I guess that's part of the, would you say, fun of what you guys do, is the fact you get to experiment, you get to create a product, and at the end of it, you've actually got something physical there that you've sort of put your heart and soul and time and investment into, whereas I think there's a lot of jobs out there where you just sort of you finish at 5 o'clock and you go home and that's it. You don't think anything more about it and you never get a thanks. Whereas
it has its pluses as well.
A nice,
true.
It's free 9 to 5. As opposed to this 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. type job.
Whilst
you sleep.
Yeah.
And even then you don't really stop
dreaming
thinking
about it.
No, I almost imagine like a line of distillates of just all the different teas. Like that would be fascinating. Even without any other botanicals, I imagine you get a lot of different flavours there. And even if the teas taste fairly similar, what we can do is the plantations where they're growing in Scotland are all really different because they're growing all around Scotland. There's some on the west coast, there's a lot around sort of Perthshire, Angus. Each of the places where these teas are growing are some really unique locations. So we can use influences from them. Even if the tea is similar, we can pull in other influences. And so, I can't wait to work with this second grower and look at
see what that see what it tastes like.
We'll look forward to that. Cool. And one thing, you guys have seem to have quite a loyal following on social media. Do you find that you have regulars? You have a loyal set of Teasmithers.
We sent one of our customers a free candle actually not that long ago because she just keeps placing orders through the website.
She was like,
I was like, we have to do something here. Like, we need a loyalty card.
This is a thing we do.
We do, and which is great because it reiterates what we set out to achieve, which was not create something a one-off that people go, "Oh yeah, okay, I'd have one of those, but never again." But something really that they get home from work on a Friday and go, do you know what? I really fancy Teasmith and Tonic. So we do have a nice loyal following now. It's hard to grow. I have to say, social media is really hard.
Especially recently.
We found it really hard to actually grow our the number of people who are seeing us. But, across the 3 channels now, we're up at probably around about 12,000 people. And, certainly on Instagram is a really successful channel for us.
And it's really great because we can, these people, we really value, their opinions. So we can, ask them about, whenever we try and do something, for example, with our glassware. We weren't sure what type of glass to use, because we have our own preferences, but... of how you like to drink your gin. So we thought, we'll just ask the Teasmithers, and sure enough, they kind of chose this.
Good choice. Tumbler is the way to go, in my humble opinion.
Martin voted for the other style.
Did you vote copper, Martin?
Did he? Oh, you remember that? He never uses a copper. What's he on about?
You're obviously feeling a bit fruity that night.
Maybe.
I was maybe feeling the pressure. That's what it was.
But and actually, but in all seriousness, that is it's really good. And actually, even down to the initial brand choice that went into the Teasmith Original, we started by putting that out to actually sort of friends and family. We sent them 4 concepts. We've always used the people that are sort of behind us. Just to see as a sounding board. And we do that now. We'll regularly do that now. We had a label design change that we were looking at. We put that out to our social media following. It's really interesting.
It is, because it's never what you would expect.
It isn't.
in that case, it was very, very close, wasn't
Yeah.
it? But,
It's really helpful.
Yeah, it's good enough.
You know, you don't often get. There's not many times you can go out and get a sort of like a sample of 300 people.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Whereas we can put that out across the social media and we get that quite quickly.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, what have been some of your best moments from the sort of 3.5, 4 years?
Best moments.
I think so. When we started, we were just two people sat in our local cafe, Coffee Apothecary, having coffee, going, "Come on, let's do this."
Yeah.
And one of the brands that came out probably within the first 6 months of us getting going was Harris. You know, and we were like, "Man, look at it! Such a nice brand, like such a nice brand."
Yeah.
And then a year later, we were at the first inaugural Scottish Gin Awards, and we were in the finals against them for the brand award.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that was a real kind of like surreal moment whereby we had seen something that we thought we could never try and beat. And we were kind of giving them a run for their money.
Yeah.
They won and we didn't win, but rightly so.
Yeah.
But it was the fact that we'd developed something that was real.
Yeah.
We got it to such a level. I think that was probably quite a high.
Definitely. And we've had a few nice award wins like along the way, haven't we? And that's always quite nice to get those little stickers on the bottle.
Yeah. It's a lot of it's little stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we were out. We got into the gift shop at Balmoral Castle.
Yeah.
You know, we almost displaced the incumbent, who I won't name, but is, major brand. Do you know what I mean? So to sort of get these little wins,
it is the little things sometimes. Yeah.
that is just these little like, check what we can do when we put our minds to it. I mean, they're the sort of satisfying bits.
Yeah, absolutely. Even there's sometimes, I suppose, it's just one comment from a consumer or someone following you, that can actually lift your spirits, isn't it? Or someone leaves you feedback or sends you an email, or sometimes it's those little things, those gestures, isn't it? As opposed to the glitzy stuff.
And I think as well, because you are a husband and wife team, that things mean more to you. There's not a marketing team above you and a level of managers and yeah. There's not an office of business development people sitting on the phone 24 hours a day. So every success you have and every good moment is shared, and you feel like you've earned it, I guess.
Yeah, it's really personal.
Yeah.
But
it's a roller coaster. It really, I mean, in a week, it's amazing, how high and low, you can be in a day, actually, in 24 hours.
24 hours.
I never would, never experienced that in any other career that I've had before. It's it's certainly a journey.
Especially now.
Yeah.
When you realise, something comes along that no business plan can take account of. So you put yourself in a real position of risk compared to maybe someone who just works a straight 9 to 5. But if you said to the bank, "Oh, well, there's going to be a global pandemic and it's going to affect the whole world," they'll laugh at you. Do you know what I mean? But here we are, and all this, and I think it's given me this huge appreciation of the importance of small business and the importance of supporting small business.
Yeah.
And I hope anyone who's watching this tonight, I can't reiterate that enough, because we're already seeing the data whereby people are starting to just go back to the supermarket shopping. There was this little peak of support your local, but it's almost wearing off. I think if one thing that can come out of everything is just help support your local small business, because we're just one example of tens of hundreds of thousands, and every one of them needs your help right now, so badly. So
absolutely, we'd have to. And so, what are the long-term plans? I know that you've quite rightly made the point that things have changed for everyone, short-term and maybe even medium. But what are the long-term plans for you guys?
So I think we're just looking at continually expanding the reach, I guess, of the product. So really, in the last couple of years, we've focused heavily on the northeast and Scotland. It's just to try and spread it around the UK that little bit further, which is pretty hard to do given the how loud the gin industry is at the moment. But we're just starting to, just before things got tricky, we were just making some really good inroads with some sort of national wholesalers. So we just want to keep going on those. Also, some export opportunities are on the horizon at the minute. So there's something quite big, hopefully happening towards the end of the year that we can't really say anything about. But that could be a really interesting option for us if we can just get that over the line. And once we've got that, just keep expanding those markets, because there's plenty of markets out there, especially globally. Scottish gin's got a great reputation. And we're hoping we can just kind of build on that and send it to as many places as possible.
Absolutely. Good.
I need to help because my dad actually ordered the bottle online really early on. He's in Australia, and it ended up costing over 200 Aussie dollars. So if there's any Australian importers out there that watch this, then if you could just link up, that'd be really good.
That'd make your dad very happy.
That really would make my dad's day.
And that would be specifically Perth, WA.
Yeah,
absolutely. But we're open to all the Australian.
Yeah, of course. $200. Wow, that's rough going.
Nearly all of that was delivery and then the customs charge when it got there. So
I think he enjoyed it.
He enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I guess it shows. I guess it shows he loves you anyway. You know. He could have returned it.
That's it. And just to end, I guess, on a, I mean, I was going to say controversial, but actually it's been discussed so much now, it's probably not anymore. But what do you believe makes a Scottish gin Scottish?
I think if you're calling it like a distilled product, like a Scottish distilled product, then to be honest, like a distillation step happening in Scotland is a logical place to start. We're 3 years in. We were hearing this debate 3 years ago with the Scottish Distillers Association. It doesn't seem to have moved anywhere. I think whatever you're doing with your product, as long as you're open and you're honest about what you're doing, if there's a compounding step in Scotland, maybe that's enough. But I think it's just be open and honest about where it's made. Yeah, especially if you're a location-centric brand. You know, we've seen a lot of examples where it's a location-centric brand because that's just easy. You know, call it after a town's gin, but just be really aware that if you're not made there, then people are going to ask questions. You know what I mean? But for us, it's not about that. You know, for us, it's more a botanical focus. It's one that focuses on Scotland's great heritage with the tea trade. And it is distilled and bottled right here in Scotland. So we're kind of quite fortunate that we've not had to get sucked into that debate as such.
Yeah. If you're upfront and honest and say where your gin is made on the bottle, as you guys,
right there.
There's no real, whisperings or and that's how rumour starts and everything. So
and I think as well it's maybe about continuing to build that confidence from the consumer in the term Scottish gin, that they're in a position where if it says Scottish gin on the bottle, they obviously assume it's probably made in Scotland, and I think it's about, for us anyway, it's about protecting that terminology almost, is it?
We just always wanted to be really open about it because we read the labelling guidelines and it suggested it should be there. And also just from a just so it was really clear and unambiguous, we wanted it right there on the bottle, which is why we had it. We did find we almost got sucked into that debate because we're based up here in Aberdeenshire, but the distillery is down in Perthshire. But that really is just a function of when we started, we were one of like the early brands, and there weren't any gin distilleries in Aberdeenshire for us to use. Like Strathern was our nearest, and it's just what we've ended up doing. But it's great because they've created a great product, and we're glad that we're working with them, and we're glad that we can be straight up and honest about it.
They've got a fantastic reputation in the industry as well. You know, Tony Riemann-Clark and is it Zach?
Mm-hmm.
Zach, yeah, Zach.
Well, you know, I think these guys have created a brilliant business off the back of hard work and almost driving the craft sort of spirits revolution forward from their little distillery in Perthshire.
100%, yeah. You know, and you know, now they're owned by Douglas Lane. So it's changed in the years that we've been working with them, but they're still doing a fantastic job. So we're still really proud to be working with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hear, hear. Well, on that note, that was our last question and your last answer. So thank you very much for joining us, guys. That was great, giving up your Wednesday evening, although we don't really, any of us don't really have a choice at the moment, apart from being stuck in the house. No,
we'll
that's
get back
good.
to the living room then, shall we?
That's it. At least your wee boy stayed in his bed throughout the interview, so good on him. Good on him.
But no, thanks as always, guys, for joining us for a chat tonight, and obviously thanks for all your support over the last 2 years as well. So
thank you for spreading the good word. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we'll hopefully see you face to face.
At some point, we'll get a coffee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take
definitely.
care.
You guys take care, okay?
Good night.
All the best.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And I waved when I said bye there, which I read today is something people are saying. You would never wave to someone when you say bye to them face to face. So I don't know why we're all doing it on virtual meetings.
I can't say I ever noticed you were weaving. So,
but no, thanks to Nick and Emma for joining us. That was really good, and learned a few things about the different tea expressions there, and excited to see what other Scottish tea leaves they can find throughout Scotland and bring out in some new, sounds like some new limited edition or new gins. So we'll watch carefully on that. Right, we'll leave it there. Who's up next?
We have Deer Nest Distillery coming up, I believe. But we might have someone coming up next week. We're just waiting to confirm a few details. So watch this space and
keep an eye on social media. We always try and promote it on all.
Yeah,
all the
and we've got a little
channels.
something out on the Times on Saturday.
Yeah, exciting for World Gin Day, which hopefully you'll all be celebrating with your local gins, as Nick quite rightly said, supporting local. But for World Gin Day, we've collaborated with the Times, and they're putting out something a little bit special that we've helped them with. So we're very proud and excited to see that go to print on Saturday. So make sure you buy the Times on Saturday.
Is it Times Scotland?
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Okay, good night. We'll leave it at that. We'll see you next time.
Stay safe, everyone. Thanks again for watching. Take care. Cheers.